Welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast. Check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. And while you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing. All those articles and those academies, and, go buy some books. Go check out some events, all that stuff. Also, you want to hit that donate link in the right-hand corner. See if you can become a contributor, which we would appreciate very much, because that's how all this stuff is made possible, by people chipping in and making it all free. How we're giving all this stuff away, that's how. It's people like you. So if you're one of those, thank you very much. If you'd like to become one of those, go over there and sign on up. Chad, we are in Isaiah chapter 21. Isaiah's been wandering around naked for 3 years, just, as a sign, to the people. God, sometimes when God makes you a sign, like in the flesh, like, hey, I want you to be this neon sign to the world, it involves some humiliation for you. And this happens to Isaiah. And we just got through that. And now we are entering into everyone's favorite. And they were hoping that we'd get some more of these. I know. Well, don't worry. We got oracles.
We've had a lot of emails, people asking, hey, can we get more oracles?
Yeah,
so
that wasn't all the oracles, was it? I was hoping for more.
The people ask, we deliver. We got a bunch more oracles coming up here. This is we were talking just before you hit record that this is the beginning of a new set of oracles. So back in chapter 13 of Isaiah, we started these oracles, and that was really the first section of these oracles. So we finished that up with chapter 20, Isaiah walking around in his birthday suit. And now we're starting 21 with another set of oracles. So we're going to have, actually the key word oracle occurs 5 times in this next section, which is 21 through 23. And then if you're still not oracled out, well, we've got good news for you, because chapter 24 through 27 is going to be another set of oracles. So a lot of stuff going on here. I think just kind of step back from the individual verses and chapters and look at the big picture here. One of the takeaways is that, God early in Isaiah talked about the establishment of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of the Messiah, this Davidic ruler, the son of David, who's going to reign over this kingdom of peace and new creation and all these wonderful things. Now, when we left that behind in chapter 12, he shifted the focus to all these individual nations, big nations, Assyria, Babylon, Egypt, and then smaller nations, even tribes, which we're going to hear about in chapter 21. And I think, one of the takeaways from that is that God, there's not a nation or a people or a tribe that God isn't concerned about, that he's not in some way involved in their present and their future. We can sometimes get the impression, God's doing his thing with Babylon or Assyria or Egypt or whoever it might be. But he's also doing his thing, with the Ammonites and the Edomites and the Philistines and even some of these Arabian tribes that are going to be mentioned here. So it's not like there's some people group that God is like, it's really have to worry about them. No, he's got a word, not just that he's concerned and active in their history, but in this case, he even has Isaiah, his prophet, speak a word to that situation. So in the big picture of world history, God is in big and small ways orchestrating events that lead all of these various peoples and groups toward the ultimate goal, and that is this day of the Lord that comes up all the time in the Old Testament, which is, of course, the day of the Messiah and the establishment of his kingdom. So that's kind of a one takeaway from kind of the big picture of what's going on here. So in this case, we're going to, beginning of this new set of oracles, we're going to shift our focus to Babylon. And Babylon, it comes up all the time in the scriptures. I mean, of course, this all goes back to Genesis and the Tower of Babel, where you have Babel, the tower, being this picture of human pride and arrogance and self-sufficiency and rejection of God. And we're going to do our own thing. All of this basic human tendency at self-deification. And that's why the Tower of Babel and Babylon and Babylonia, they become this dominant biblical motif that goes all the way to Revelation, where you have, once more, fallen is Babylon. So Babylon becomes a cipher for not just Babylon, the historic city, but for any movement of humanity, whether it's a nation or empire or whatever it might be, that is all about itself and self-sufficiency and self-salvation projects and self-deification, self. That's what Babylon becomes the image for.
Yeah. Apart, if you didn't, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it seems like if you didn't have the Bible, Babylon would really be like some footnote in history. Babylon is like a word that people know because of the scriptures.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah,
because
this is true.
in the scriptures, Babylon appears a lot, as you were saying. It's there a lot. And then it kind of tells you something about how the scriptures work, where the scriptures will focus in on something that maybe the history books don't make that big a deal out of.
Yeah, Persia maybe. Persia's big. Mm-hmm. Because Persia has all of these run-ins with the Greeks. So we got a lot of history that revolves around that, and of course Egypt too. Egypt's kind of big in world history. But yeah, I think if you didn't have the scriptures, Babylon wouldn't be a primary, secondary, even a tertiary concern. But it's a big concern in the scriptures because of its iconic significance as a picture of human rebellion and this propensity to focus on self. So we're going to hear about Babylon. So chapter 21, read a few verses here. The oracle, there you go. That's how it starts out. The oracle concerning, and we have this, to us anyway, kind of a strange description, the wilderness of the sea.
I kind of like that description.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool image.
I think it's informative of the. So if you didn't know, and I know we've talked about it a lot, what the sea represents, which of course is just like chaos and uncertainty, and the sea is a great place to go die, because it's unpredictable,
yeah, right.
And so, and then we, the wilderness. That we understand a little bit better. Like, you don't want to be in the wilderness. You don't want to be lost in the wilderness. That would be horrible. And so, like, the wilderness of the sea, it sort of it maps, it kind of puts over the top of the sea what the Bible means by the sea a lot of the time. Because when we think sea, I think sometimes we think of something kind of good. Where it's like, well, I want a holiday by the sea.
It's a holiday by the sea.
That's what I want. Like,
beach,
I want to get on a boat and eat a sandwich on the sea, and that would be awesome. Maybe I'd just take a nap in a boat with the sun coming down. It'd be great. That is like almost never what the Bible means when it talks about the sea. And when you say wilderness of the sea, you're like, well, I don't want that sea. I don't want a sea that's a wilderness. No, I don't want that at all.
Yeah, and I think you've hit exactly on I think the reason that Isaiah chose that image. So you got two things going on. You've hit on kind of the symbolism of it, which is exactly why Isaiah chose that. And at the same time, he's playing off of a designation that was often used to refer to southern Mesopotamia, where there's Assyrian sources that refer to it as the sea land. So you got the land by the sea because of its location. And there's a lot of like marshes kind of between the Tigris and Euphrates where Babylon was at. So you got this historic way of designating that area. But when it's used in the scriptures with all of the symbolism of wilderness and sea, you see what Isaiah is doing here. I mean, he's punning off of this, right? Oh yeah, it's the land of the sea, the wilderness of the sea. Not just by name, but also by the theological symbolism attached to it.
Yeah, and if you're talking to like the people of Israel, if you're talking to the Jews, wilderness is not like bringing something great to mind, right? Like, I mean, there's an initial thing that comes to mind when you hear the wilderness, and it has to do with 40 years and wandering around.
Yeah, their bodies fell in the wilderness,
Yeah.
all the graves that mark the travels of Israel. Yeah, not a great place to be. Well, you have that in the New Testament too. I mean, where does Jesus go to have his encounter with Satan? Well, it's where he goes, into the wilderness. So we start out here with some whirlwinds in the Negev. And the Negev is also part of this desert, this arid region in the southern part of Israel. As whirlwinds in the Negev sweep on, it comes from the wilderness, from a terrible land. It seems that Isaiah is wanting us to think of this approaching destruction and chaos by using the image of whirlwinds. I always think of the whirlwinds, like when I grew up in New Mexico. We'd have these winds come up, and you have these swirling dust whirlwinds that would come through and sandpaper you as they were passing by. So that's what I always think of when I think of these whirlwinds. So that's the image he starts out with. And then he switches. He says in verse 2, a stern vision is told to me. And then he uses two different ways of describing, kind of encapsulating what this is all about, or at least partially what this is about. The betrayer betrays. You could say the betrayer betrays. And the destroyer destroys. Which seems to indicate, I mean, at least at this point, there's kind of an upending of expectations, maybe military expectations or something like that. So the betrayer is going to get betrayed and the destroyer is going to get destroyed. So in other words, maybe what you think is going to happen or hope is going to happen is not going to happen. It's going to be the opposite. A lot of this is cryptic, but the best that I've been able to piece together from all the sources that I looked at for this is that the background to a lot of what Isaiah is saying here is based historically in his own time period. So you've got, as we've discussed many times, you've got the superpower of the Assyrians, right? At this stage in history, it's the Assyrians who are the dominant threat to Israel. And we'll see this later on in Isaiah chapter 39. At one point, there's a group that comes from Babylon, these ambassadors from Babylon. It's when Hezekiah is king, and they're trying to curry favor with him. And so probably what's in the background of this chapter is the temptation, or maybe even the hope that a lot of the Israelites have to ally themselves with Babylon and to think, oh, we got to do something about the Assyrians. Well, let's team up with the Babylonians, and they're going to help us against the Assyrians. So if that, and I think it is, the background here, then that's going to explain some of the language that's coming up.
Yeah,
because
isn't what's implied here is like, okay, you know what betrayers do? They betray, and you know what destroyers do? They destroy. And so, what is it that you know about these people? That's what they are, and so you're gonna be shocked, but shouldn't be when that's what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Careful whom you embrace, because they might have a knife behind their back, and that's what's going to happen here. Except in this case, it's going to be, you can't trust them, and also they're going to have a downfall. So if you, O Israel, want to team up with Babylon, well then know, first of all, that Babylon can't be trusted, and secondly, that Babylon is going to be destroyed by the Assyrians. There were a number of defeats or destructions, partial or complete destructions of Babylon over the years. This is probably referring to a destruction that comes from the Assyrians. Because when the Assyrians were the dominant power, you had the Babylonians trying to jockey into position to usurp that dominance. And the Assyrians, they didn't let that happen. And so you have a destruction of Babylon at one point by the Assyrians, which is probably the historic background of this. Now he goes up and says, he continues to say, "Go up, O Elam, lay siege, O Media. All the sighing she has caused, I will bring to an end." So Elam and Media, they were, at this time, they were teamed up with Babylon. And so he seems to be saying to the Elamites and to the people of Media, hey, stop the Assyrians. Go up, lay siege, right? All the sign that she, that is Assyria, has caused, I bring to an end. So help us out. You go up, people of Elam. You go up, people of Media, and bring this to an end. Bring the Assyrian threat to an end. But that's not going to happen, because the response of verse 3 tells us, and this is some intense language on the part of Isaiah, he sees what's going to happen and realizes, oh, this is all destined to fail. You can't trust Babylon, because Babylon is going to be laid waste by the Assyrians. And so he has this response. He says in verse 3 and 4, therefore, my loins are filled with anguish. Pangs have seized me, like the pangs of a woman in labor. I am bowed down so that I cannot hear. I'm dismayed so that I cannot see. My heart staggers. Horror has appalled me. The twilight, I love this line, the twilight I longed for has been turned for me into trembling. So Isaiah sees what's going to happen, and he realizes, hey, there is no hope for the Israelites in the Babylonians, and therefore the Assyrians are going to keep on coming. And whatever vision he has, it impacts him in such a way that he is drawing upon the strongest language which he can muster to describe this. Anguished loins, and he feels like a woman in labor, and he can't hear, and he can't see. He's so bowed down. He's so dismayed. He was looking for the twilight I long for. See, he wanted this to come to an end. He wanted the Assyrian threat to come to an end, for that threat to be, as it were, darkened. And that's not going to happen. The twilight I longed for, it's been turned for me into trembling. So Isaiah, either speaking personally or at least maybe for his nation, sees that it's not going to get better before it gets worse. And the Babylonians are not going to be any help to the people of Israel. Then he goes on with, I think, probably the most cryptic verse in this whole section, because we don't really know who he's talking about. He says in verse 5, they prepare the table, they spread the rugs, they eat, they drink. Arise, O princes, oil the shield. So my best guess, and that's all that this is basically Isaiah saying to either to the people of Elam or Media, or maybe to the people of Babylon, they're chilling. They got their table ready. They got the rugs spread out. They're having a feast. They're drinking the best wine. They're doing all of this. And the prophet or somebody else says, get up, oil the shield. In other words, get ready for battle. Don't be kicking back. Rather, prepare yourselves for war. But as they do, it's all going to fail. Because here's what happens next. Verse 6. Thus the Lord said to me, go, set a watchman. Let him announce what he sees. When he sees riders, horsemen in pairs, riders on donkeys, riders on camels, let him listen diligently, very diligently. All right, so get this watchman set up and let him scan the horizon. Let him look for these riders that are coming on donkeys and camels and horses. And let him not fall asleep, but pay attention. So this is the scenario that's created. Then he goes on. Then he who saw cried out. So this is the watchman speaking. He says, upon a watchtower I stand, O Lord, continually by day, and at my post I am stationed whole nights. And behold, here come riders, horsemen in pairs. So he's doing his job. He's on the watchtower. He's scanning the horizon. He's staying awake night and day. And then he sees it. He sees the horsemen coming in pairs, and they're returning from the battle. And here's the message that they have. Fallen is Babylon, and all the carved images of her gods he has shattered to the ground. O my threshed and winnowed one, what I have heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I announce to you. So if we're right about the historic background here, that Israel was tempted to join up with Babylon, then Isaiah is creating this whole scene where he says, okay, here's what's going to happen. You put a watchman up there and let us know when news comes back. Well, the news has come back, and it's not good news for those who put their hopes in Babylon, because Babylon is fallen. And not just the city, but the gods in which the city trusted. They're shattered to the ground. They're destroyed. And so Isaiah then turns and addresses his own people, and he calls them the threshed and winnowed ones, which is a pretty violent and powerful image. You've been threshed, you've been winnowed. And so he's saying, listen, this is what I've heard, and this is what now I am announcing to you. So the basic message of this entire section seems to be, don't put your trust in the Babylonians, because the Babylonians themselves are going to be overcome by the Assyrians. You're going to have to put your trust somewhere else. And of course, that somewhere else is going to be the Lord himself. So this is one more cautionary tale to Israel about allying themselves with any other foreign power, whether it's the Egyptians or whether it's the Assyrians or whether it's anybody else, because their trust is ultimately going to be in the one who is not just a God of a nation, but the only true God, the God of Israel.
Yeah, it seems like maybe part of what he's saying here is that, obviously, don't put your trust here because it needs to belong to the Lord. But also, look at these guys. They're preparing a feast when they should be preparing for battle. This is not this. This is misplaced hope for sure.
Yeah, misplaced hope in the wrong people, wrong city, wrong gods. Instead, put your trust where it should always be, in the one who is the promise-keeping God of Israel. Okay, so that ends that oracle. And we got a couple of short oracles coming up. So we covered Babylon, covered the wilderness of the sea, and now he's going to switch gears and talk to a couple of smaller places. One called Dunah, and then Arabia. So the oracle concerning Dunah is real short, 2 verses. The oracle concerning Dunah. And Dunah itself is, it's referring to either a city or a place in Edom, which of course is associated with Esau. It's south of the Dead Sea. But it's also, I think, significant because the word itself means silence. So it's like this, they have nothing to say, nothing to contribute, because they too are going to be overcome. So here's the 2 verses. One is calling to me from Seir, and Seir is another name for Edom. One is calling to me from Seir. So this is, I think this is like Isaiah personifying someone from Edom. And here's what they say. Watchman, what time of the night? Watchman, what time of the night? And the watchman replies, morning comes, and also the night. If you will inquire, come back again. Again, kind of like cryptic language, but what seems to be implied is that, hey, what's coming up? What time is it? What should we expect, in other words? What's on the horizon? And the watchman says, morning and night. So we're not done yet. In some way, this kind of summarizes a lot of the hopes that we have. Is it over yet? How long? How much longer we have to wait? Well, a little bit longer, because it's not done yet. And if the background of this is also the background of the previous oracle, then you have Edom also threatened by the Assyrians. And they're being told here, well, yeah, morning is here, but also night. Maybe you have a short reprieve, but there's more darkness coming.
So Babylon, you're talking about something that is more tempting to put your trust in, or this is a bigger force than Dunah, which is much smaller, and so they're maybe asking other people like, hey, so what's the scuttlebutt here? Because you guys is this gonna reach us? I mean, are you guys gonna fend this off? Let us know what's going on. So they're calling out to other watchmen, right? Where are we at in this whole thing?
Yeah.
And it seems like when I read this, the watchman says, they're saying, hey, what's going on with the night? And he's like, well, here's the thing. Morning is coming, but in the morning, also night is coming. Like you have like both these things. So, the sun's going to come up is what's going to happen, and with it, the night. Like and so, which is a way of saying, the sun's going to come up, but it's darkness, buddy.
It's going to be there's going to be darkness at noon, if not earlier. Yeah. You can be eating your breakfast, and it's going to be dark because morning is here. And also night, a nocturnal morning. There you go. Yeah,
and that's kind of how it seems. That like basically the reply is, "You're in big trouble." Is what I'm talking.
Yeah, there you go. That's the Dan and Chad paraphrase of those of that oracle. You're in trouble. Okay, we got another short one. This is a little bit longer. This one concerns Arabia. So verse 13 through the end of the chapter, which is verse 17. Okay, so the oracle concerning Arabia goes this way. In the thickets in Arabia, you will lodge, O caravan of the Dedanites.
Don't want to do that. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah, lodging in Arabian thickets.
No.
So the Dedanites are traders, people with caravans in this Arabian wilderness, and what they're doing is they're running away. So the Assyrians are marching onward, and the caravan folks, the Dedanites, they're running away. They're fleeing.
Probably you and I are both familiar with thickets, Chad. Now, maybe not everyone's familiar with a thicket, but
I know thickets well.
Let me tell you, if you're sleeping in a thicket, I know for sure you're hiding. Because there's no other reason that you would do this.
No. Yeah. So we live here in East Texas, and I drive around, and I see thickets everywhere, and you don't want to be in those thickets.
No.
Not only is it very thick, but it's also
very pokey.
Crawling with critters and all sorts of other threats that you do not want to have any kind of close contact with if you're trying to get some sleep.
Yeah, thickets always seem pokey to me. Like, you're like, it's not going to be like comfortable at all.
No, this is not a 5-star hotel in Arabia if you're in the thickets. So you're hiding out, most likely. And then it continues, to the thirsty bring water. Meet the fugitives with bread, O inhabitants of the land of Tamah. So Tamah, or Tema, is an oasis city, and it's on the northwest border of the Arabian desert. And so the people in the caravan who've been running away, he's telling these people of Tema or Tamah to, hey, bring them some water. And they're fugitives, so bring them some bread. They fled from the swords, from the drawn sword. They fled from the bent bow and from the press of battle. So whether they were the actual objects of the attack or whether they simply saw it coming, they got to get out of there. So they're fugitives of war. And they need water, they need food, and so he's telling them, hey, meet these people. Well, it seems to be kind of in the background here is that, you can team up, you can help out these other people. And which is a good thing, of course, help out the fugitives. But as we'll see in the next two verses, you can do that. You can team up, you can help out, but also know that there is coming a time when you too will receive the brunt of the Assyrian army, because it finishes up this way. Thus says the Lord to me, within a year, according to the years of a hired worker, and we talked about that, I don't know, 2 or 3 chapters ago, meaning like every single day. So the years of a hired worker are like, yeah, I mean, you're out there, you're in the field, you're wherever, and you're counting every single hour that you're out there. So this doesn't mean like, most of a year, 10 months. No, this is like 365 days. According to the years of a hired worker, within a year, all the glory of Kedar will come to an end. And that's Kedar, just kind of a general title for the Arabian area with its tribes, or northern portion of Arabia, associated with the descendants of Ishmael. So all the glory of this part of Arabia is going to come to an end. And the remainder of the archers, of the mighty men of the sons of Kedar, will be few, for the Lord, the God of Israel, has spoken. Well, why are they going to be few? Well, because they're wiped out by the Assyrians. So you can flee, you can hide in the thickets, you can help people out who are war fugitives, but know that in the end, there's night coming. And this night will be in the form of the Assyrian army as it sweeps through the land. There's a lot of good news in that chapter.
Yeah, it's never good when you hear a bunch of bad news and then it says the Lord has spoken. 'Cause you're like, oh, well, this is Isaiah saying he said what he said.
Yeah. I'm a prophet. I'm relaying the news that came from the Lord.
Yeah. He said what he said, and he's probably not going to unsay it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's this is a bummer if you're in this situation.
It is. Yeah. All right. So here we are, chapter 22, another oracle.
Longer one here. We got a longer one here because we're talking about the place now.
Yeah, here we are. This is an oracle concerning Jerusalem, which is called here the Valley of Vision. Quite a poetic description. No one knows for sure why it's called the Valley of Vision. There wasn't a valley around Jerusalem that was named the Valley of Vision, but maybe it's there's a lot of valleys around Jerusalem, and this is where the vision came, or maybe it's a valley of vision because it's a vision about things not high and joyful, but low and dark that's coming upon the people of Jerusalem. Whatever the reason was, anyway, that's the title that's given to this particular part of Isaiah. So, what is the oracle concerning the Valley of Vision? Here's how he starts. What do you mean? Or like, what's up with you? You could kind of translate that idiomatically. What's up with you? You who have gone up, all of you, to the housetops. You who are full of shouting, a tumultuous city, an exultant town. So Isaiah's like, why are you partying on the rooftops? What's wrong with you people? So yeah, we don't party on our housetops, at least not here in Texas usually, because we have sloped roofs. I guess maybe if you live in some major city and you have access to the rooftop and it's flat, you can have a party up there, right? Well, that's the way it was in Israel. I mean, you had flat roofs, and so you spent a lot of time on the roof of your house. It was cooler in the summertime. You could get together, especially if you had a big house. That's where David was, of course, when he spotted Bathsheba bathing. He was on his rooftop. So got a flat roof, and you're having a party up there. Shouting, tumult, exultant. Presumably, what's going on here is they're happy because the Assyrian threat has at least temporarily either dissipated or ceased continually. At least they think that it has. So why are you partying is what Isaiah starts out by saying. Then he switches. He says, your slain are not slain with the sword or dead in battle. All your leaders have fled together. Without the bow they were captured. All of you who were found were captured, though they had fled away. So if I'm right here about the background of this, then you had the threat from the Assyrians. This is when Sennacherib invaded the southern kingdom and destroyed several major cities like Lachish, where you have, in fact, you have back in Babylon, you have this famous relief of the siege and the conquest of Lachish with the Assyrians coming in, and I mean they're just decimating the place, just wiping it out. You got people left and right being killed, and we have independent evidence of this too. The Lachish letters, which document how bad the situation was there in Lachish. So that was what was going on around this time. And it wasn't just Lachish. It was a number of cities that were besieged and destroyed by the Assyrians. And the Assyrian annals, they describe how many the Judeans that they took out. So it was a lot of slaughter that was going on, a lot of captures that were going on. Now Jerusalem was saved. Jerusalem wasn't taken. This is when Hezekiah was the king. He was hemmed in or caged in like a bird that's caged. That's the way the Assyrians described it in their own writings. So you have Jerusalem, as it were, throwing a party, even though it's no reason for partying, given the destruction that was all around them in the surrounding cities. Isaiah continues in verse 4 to say, "Therefore I said, look away from me. Let me weep bitter tears. Do not labor to comfort me concerning the destruction of the daughter of my people." So I'm not here to rejoice, but I'm here to lament because of all the destruction that has come upon Judea.
Yeah, so the idea here is that, like, okay, you're slain or not slain with the sword or dead in battle, but and this is maybe like an additional thing that's going on, which is sometimes how the prophetic stuff works. But he does say that there are slain. They're just not slain with the sword or dead in battle. And their leaders, they have fled, is the word he'll use. But they were captured without a bow or arrow or anything like that. And those other ones that were found, they were captured. Like, spiritually speaking, it seems that Isaiah is saying, like, this was like over long ago, and it didn't take. This isn't about the army that marches in and kills you all with the sword. Like, you guys were all dead before that, and your leaders, they were captured, all right. They were seduced away or whatever. Their hearts were captured, and no one had to, like, have a threat of shooting them with an arrow or anything like that. And the whole reason that God is allowing this to happen is because these people are slain and their leaders are captured, and like, spiritually speaking, right? That it did. The issue here is that maybe you believe that you escaped some fate that the surrounding areas suffered because their people are dead, but he's like, you're dead too. You're just as captured as anybody else. In fact, it actually has little to do with bows and arrows and swords. Like, I mean, it was the hearts of the people moved on from God, and this is ultimately what is the cause of all of this. This is why I have lifted my hand from it.
Yeah, and he's going to make that explicit. Just to jump down to verse 11, at the end of verse 11 for a minute. So in the intervening verses, he's going to talk about more destruction, but also how the city of Jerusalem was making preparations for the siege. And then we have this killer line at the end of verse 11. He'll say, prefacing this, he'll say, you looked to this human work and you looked to that human work. You looked to all these things you were doing, but you did not look to him who did it, talking about God, or to him who planned it long ago. So it was a misplaced trust, in other words, exactly what you were describing. So you were dead before you were dead.
Yep.
Because you were not. This whole chapter is all about self-reliance and not turning to the Lord, not looking to him.
You were captured long before you were captured, and it didn't take an army to do it.
Yeah, that's right. You did this very well, all on your own. So I can do a couple more verses here before we're out of time. He switches to verse 5 to say, the Lord God of hosts has a day. It's a day of tumult and trampling and confusion in the valley of vision, a battering down of walls and a shouting to the mountains. Elam bore the quiver with chariots and horsemen, and Kir uncovered the shield. Your choicest valleys were full of chariots, and the horsemen took their stand at the gates. He has taken away the covering of Judah. So what he's describing here is basically, first of all, the historic situation where you have the Assyrians showing up, and the choicest valleys are covered with chariots. So you just imagine you're a farmer, you've got a wheat or barley crop out there, and it's just getting completely devoured or destroyed by the horses and the chariots. And then you have the gates of the city, and you have them confronted by the armies of the Assyrians. The Elam and the Kir that is discussed here, contextually probably is pointing to the fact that some Elamites and the people of Kir, and no one knows really where that is, have been hired or taken as mercenaries to help the Assyrians. So this is a day of tumult, trampling, and confusion that's facing Jerusalem as the Assyrians are surrounding the city and threatening it. And we don't have time now because we're up at our 40 minutes. But next time we'll see what they did to prepare for the siege And that's when you have that indictment that they weren't looking to the Lord and to him who planned it long ago. So the oracle is proceeding along, and it's going to be actually some good news toward the end. So we'll have to get to it the next episode. You have the key of the house of David coming up in this chapter. But anyway, that's as far as we can get on this episode.
Yeah, the last thing you want is your covering taken away. I know that because you're looking at all this stuff and you're like, oh man, this looks pretty dire, and then you look in all the wrong place. Like they've removed your covering through fear, and you look in all the wrong places. And it is one of those things, because you think about Jerusalem and Israel, and you think it's some mighty thing, but the fact that it is ever a thing tells you, like, man, you guys should have always been looking to the Lord, because how do you even exist at all?
Yeah, that was the only reason that you ever had any good thing at all. So don't take your gaze away from the one who gave you every single blessing that you have received.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. We'll come back next week and get into it further. Chad, I will see you then.
All right. See you then.